And we continue at 2:06 in the afternoon on the John Phillips Show. Mr. Randy Wang's in New Mexico.
John, at today's LA City Council meeting, someone got a huge shout out, and I don't think they ever wanted it. Bill Asaley.
More criticism and more critically understood words like this mother here telling you in the great name of Bill Asaley, up your ass, city attorney, because we're going to investigate you for fraud, waste, and abuse. 42 U.S.C. 1983, politely.
Well, I guess you'll take the praise wherever you can get it.
Now, we don't usually feature that guy because he says incredibly racist things, but listen to what the city attorney said after Mr. Herman spoke.
Ladies and gentlemen and members of the public, the Brown Act does not require you to listen to the public comment of other commenters. So if you would like and you hear things that are wildly inappropriate, such as what we just heard from the previous speaker, you are more than welcome. Mr. Herman, this is your first and only warning. Do not disrupt this meeting while I am trying to give an announcement to the general public. If you do so again, you'll be subject to removal pursuant to Rule 7 and Rule 12. So, if you hear anything that is wildly offensive, you are more than welcome to step out. If you'd like, you can pop in your headphones, and as we've said before, you can also stick your fingers in your ears.
What's going on with the court case where the city council is trying to ban it so that you can't use the N-word or the C-word anymore?
Feel like that one they're going to lose.
Another day of Mr. Smith Goes to Washington over at LA City Hall. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. It is our pleasure to welcome our next guest to the program. He is a Republican political strategist, campaign strategist. You can follow him on X at Lonny Leitner. Lonny Leitner, welcome.
Hello, it's great to be here, and I hope people aren't sticking their fingers in their ears during this segment.
Me too. But thank you so much for joining us. All right, let's start out with all of these Biden books that are in the bookstores today. In fact, I think there's so many of them now, they have their own section. But basically, all the books, whether it's the Tapper book or the Fight book or all the others, are making the same point, which is that Joe Biden was incredibly senile. In private, he was worse than he was in public. Everyone knew it. There's a cabal of maybe, 4 or 5 people that ran the country who were never identified to us as actually running the country when Joe Biden was president. And now there is, I guess, some bubbling anger, as we can describe it, that's existing. Where you saw, for example, Antonio Villaraigosa. The last hour we played sound to him. He's now a candidate for governor here in California. And he said that Kamala Harris and Javier Becerra need to answer some questions about why they didn't speak up when it became apparent to them that Joe Biden was senile and incapable of performing the duties of president, and certainly wasn't in a state where he should have been reelected for another 4 years. Who knows, with his cancer diagnosis, he may not even live 4 additional years, let alone be competent enough to run the country. But as I sit here thinking, okay, well, what are the consequences going to be? Who actually got hurt by these lies? Well, thankfully, we lucked out and there wasn't a 9/11. There wasn't a major world event that took place on Joe Biden's watch, because I don't think he would have the cognitive ability to respond to it. But I think that the people who are being punished the most are essentially the enablers, essentially the Democratic Party, because by doing what they did, they set themselves up to have a choice between 2 candidates, him or Kamala Harris, neither of whom were electable. And I don't think, looking back at it from the point of view of history, I don't think it was ever in the cards for them to win that election at any point in time. I don't think Joe was going to win. I don't think Kamala was going to win. Maybe if they acknowledged that Joe was senile and they had an open convention, they could have come up with an electable candidate. But they didn't. The people that they lied to who believed them were Democratic voters, and those were the people who ultimately ended up getting punished by believing those lies. Your thoughts?
I agree with you 100%. First, I would like to say that according to the latest Rasmussen poll that they're releasing some of their results from their latest poll, 64% of Americans now think that the mainstream media gets its talking points from the CIA. Now, these silly books may convince a few viewers of the Morning Joe crowd that this was, Joe Biden was totally healthy and, doing somersaults behind closed doors in the Oval Office. But the vast majority of Americans know that this is the single greatest cover-up of all time, and the media was 100% in on it. And now they think the American people are so stupid that we're actually going to buy their book, reward their behavior so they can continue to line their pockets. People need to be held accountable. Now, I think Dr. Jill should be held accountable for elder abuse, but Kamala Harris, I don't know if she's going to be running for governor or president or maybe both, but she was the biggest enabler of this lie. And, America, we are in the midst of a major political shift, and it's shifting to the right. And one of the reasons is because of all of the lies during the last 4 years of the Biden administration. Americans begin to question every single major institution because they revealed themselves as corrupt. It's pretty sad that people do not trust the mainstream media narrative anymore. People assume the news media is lying to them. People assume their health officials are lying to them. And people assume that corporations don't have their best interests at heart. And why is this? This is because of all of the lies coming out of the Biden administration. It's clear that he had cancer. It's clear that he wasn't given all of the aptitude tests and cognitive tests that the last 3 or 4 presidents received. This was a major cover-up. This is the biggest scandal that this has faced this country in quite some time.
Moving forward, what do you think this means for the electability of candidates who are quite elderly? And I say that because Mitch McConnell, we know that he's had a bunch of health scares, including freezing on camera, falling, all of those sorts of things. He announced that he's not running for re-election. I suspect if he tried to run for re-election in Kentucky, he probably wouldn't have made it another term. Here in California, we had Dianne Feinstein die in office, who was 90 years old at the time of her death. She was basically out of it her last 2 terms. We know that other elderly members of Congress have opened up bank accounts to run for re-election, including some of our own here in California, Nancy Pelosi, Maxine Waters, and others. And you look at what's gone on in the House recently, where they just had the Democratic ranking member of the House Oversight Committee, Jerry Connolly, die in office. And I forget what number it was, but over the last year, they've had some insane number of Democratic members pass away because, for whatever reason, many of the elderly members right now in Congress, or a disproportionate number of them, are on the Democratic side of the aisle. Do you think it's going to be harder for elderly candidates to win elections now that this subject is front and center?
Well, to your point, the last 7 or 8 U.S. members of Congress that have passed away have all been Democrats. Nancy Pelosi, I don't know if she's still living. And over the weekend, I wore a shirt, Weekend at Biden's, with Joe in the middle and Obama and Dr. Jill holding him upright. But, I do think that older candidates are going to face a litmus test, unlike some of their younger opponents. And quite honestly, I think that's a good thing. President Trump, it's clear that the man has more energy than the average person in his age bracket. But I think that the cognitive test and making everything public, I think Americans will care less and less about a candidate's so-called tax records then they will care for their health records. I think Americans are going to be solely focused on candidates' health records, and, will they trust the doctors and these records? That's to be seen. But yes, I think older candidates are going to be punished, for better or worse, because of the Biden cover-up. People are going to care less and less about tax records and more about health records.
I've got to be honest. I think the age issue played a role in the American Pope becoming the next Pope. I think the Biden books and all the drama surrounding Biden impacted how they voted, because you look at the list of all of these cardinals who were on the short list to be Pope. Many of those that were regarded as frontrunners were in their 70s. They were quite elderly themselves, and they all got passed over for someone who was not seen as being one of the frontrunners, but he was younger than almost all of them.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think that they don't want a pope that's just going to be a pope for a short while. They want a generational change with a pope that can live for the next 15 to 20, 25 plus years. The odd thing is, this is President Trump's last term unless we redo the 22nd Amendment. So he has 4 years. So he's just laying it all out on the field. And, the odd thing is that I'm always surprised by Trump's greatest support is coming from those 18 to 29-year-olds and actually 30 to 39-year-olds. Over 60% of that age bracket, so the younger generation of Americans, are supporting Trump. So, I'm contradicting myself here, but it's not necessarily that they won't support older candidates, but they want to know for certain that those candidates are healthy and that they're going to be able to live out their term. I mean, we'll see what happens, but anybody who thinks that Joe Biden could have lived out the next 4 years is kidding themselves.
As someone who has worked with candidates and elected officials for a very long time, you know these people well. Some of them I'm sure you regard as being akin to family. Why do you think so many elected officials stay in office into their 70s, into their 80s, into their 90s? What's the impulse to do that?
I feel the longer they serve, the more power they get, and the less accountability there is to the people. One thing that you will learn in politics, that name ID is just about everything. So those who have name IDs, people may know very little about them or their policy positions or what their pet issues are while serving in Congress, but they know their name. So the longer they serve, the easier it is going to be for them to raise money, the easier it's going to be for them to win re-election. And I would say there's less accountability and scrutiny on those folks. And, they're just going to be enjoying most of the perks. Now, I don't personally support term limits because I think every 2 years is a term limit, but that's an argument for another day.
Well, I totally understand that, but just think about the practical aspects of being a member of Congress, where you have to get on an airplane every single week. And if you represent a state like California and you don't live next to LAX or SFO or San Diego Airport, you're probably connecting somewhere and you're getting stuck in Dallas half the time. You have to go to those rubber chicken dinners. And if you don't show up to those rubber chicken dinners, people start to talk. Where is so-and-so? They're supposed to be here. Every time you walk out of the grocery store, you have to buy the Girl Scout cookies. Otherwise, people are going to talk about that. I'm not going to say it's a difficult life because they're pandered to and they have a lot of perks associated with the job. But physically, there's no way you can get around sitting on that airplane. There's no way you can get around going to the rubber chicken dinners. There's no way you can get around sitting next to a phone dialing for dollars at night. You have to do all those things.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, to an extent you do. Unfortunately, you live in a state, California, like Minnesota, is a one-party state. So the reality is a lot of our members of Congress that are serving don't really even live in the state of California or let alone their district. Now, to be in the U.S. House, you don't have to represent the area in which you live. It would be kind of a nice idea if you did, but you have to have a residency in that state. If you Googled U.S. senators that have residency issues, you would find many. You had an interim senator that Gavin Newsom appointed that, was a resident of Maryland, yet the mainstream media and the residents and the citizens of California really didn't seem to care that that person wasn't from California. But those of us who aren't living in a one-party state, yeah, absolutely. It is tough. I know for a member that I worked for many years in Washington, who represented Minnesota in Washington, D.C., would get on the plane every Sunday night so they could be in Washington, D.C. first thing Monday morning, typically have votes, Tuesday through late Thursday. They would either get on a plane on Thursday or, early Friday morning, come back, work the district, work the fish fries, work the parades in the summertime, marching in literally hundreds of parades for one congressional district. I always love seeing the before and after photos. The picture of their freshman year when they came in, all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and then, the photo of them the last term they served, gray and tired and wrinkled. It does take a real hit on the body.
Lonny Leitner, Republican campaign strategist. You can follow him on X at Lonny Leitner. That's Lonny, Lonny, with a Y and not an IE. Lonny, thanks so much for stopping by.
Excellent.
If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, you're monitoring the mailbag.
I am?
Oh. Okay, well, let me give you some breaking news. How about that?
What was the email you wanted me to read?
Oh, God. And, of course, now there's a pop-up, so I can't read anything.
And when we mean breaking, we mean breaking down.
Okay, here we go. President Trump has just pardoned Todd and Julie Chrisley. The reality show stars from Chrisley Knows Best on the USA Network, they're going to be leaving the clink. The reality TV couple, according to TMZ, had been serving hard time after being convicted wrongfully in 2022 of financial crimes, but now they will be getting released from federal prison. Trump called Todd and Julie Chrisley's daughter, Savannah, to give her the good news. Todd and Julie were found guilty on federal charges of bank fraud and tax evasion, with Todd getting sentenced to 12 years in prison and Julie getting sentenced to 7 years in federal lockup. The Chrisleys filed appeals for lighter sentences, but those were denied, and now Trump is swooping in to grant them their freedom. Savannah, who also starred her parents' reality show, blasted the convictions last year at the RNC, calling out the prosecutors who handled her parents' federal case in Georgia, suggesting politics played a role in their convictions, and even claiming an Obama-appointed judge called her family the Trumps of the South. Let me tell you, I actually read a lot about this trial. That judge was totally unprofessional. I have no clue how that judge even passed the bar exam, let alone became a judge. I think the judge was appointed by Biden, so that tells you everything you need to know. The government was caught lying and falsifying documents in the effort to get these people convicted. There is no way, no chance those people should have ever been tried, let alone convicted. And now they have been pardoned by President Trump. Thank God.
Now, do you think this is going to be the only reality TV show pardoning, or do you think next week Joe Exotic's getting out?
It could be him next. You never know. If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, you're monitoring the mailbag.
Okay, this is great. We've mentioned how we're live today in Los Angeles, but we're on tape in the Bay Area because they're literally moving the server to the radio station. We'll be back live statewide tomorrow. So there's a best of running that I put together, and I don't totally remember what was on it, but I know it was good stuff because I put it together. I'm convinced that the hour that's running right now on KSFO is about Katie Porter because we haven't mentioned her once this entire show. And all the emails are starting to come in calling her by the wrong name.
Absolutely.
Let's go to Ben in Santa Monica. Ben, hello.
Oh.
Hi there.
Talking to Democrats, being a former Democrat, now independent, I feel free. I feel like I'm more effective voter to help purge the Democratic Party. And I ask all Democrats this question: who's a better Democrat? Somebody who blindly votes for a drooling idiot traitor like Joe Biden, or who takes a moment and stops voting Democrat across the board until the Democrats purge, because they need to be purged. They're the party of gaslighting now. So I don't care what they promise. They don't deliver on anything. Nothing.
All right. Thank you for the call, sir. Let's go to Ray in Manhattan Beach. Ray, hello.
Hi. I was thinking about who's the biggest beneficiary of a 2-year election cycle. And it's the media, because they get all the advertising dollars. And, like when you're voting for a proposition, they don't tell you what the proposition is really about until the election is over, because they don't want to lose the ad revenue from all those propositions. And they have to love Kamala Harris because, oh my God, she squandered $1 billion. So when you look at how all that stuff works, it's just, and that's why they like the conflict, because they want the revenue. They want people to donate a bunch of money to these guys so they can raise a ton of revenue.
Well, the media definitely benefits from it, but when the 2-year terms were established for the House and the 6-year terms were established for the Senate and 4-year terms were established for president, TV and radio hadn't been invented yet.
Yeah, but they're winning now.
That's true. And they won even more when you had local elections in odd years, because then that's when you'd have the mayor's race and the city council races and all of the local initiatives that we would vote on. But now that went away. Thank you for the call, sir. If George Washington and James Madison and Thomas Jefferson and the boys established those 2-year cycles back in the 1700s so that radio and television would benefit 150 years later, I'll tell you, our industry lobbyists are smarter than I gave them credit for. What are you going to do? All right, let's go back to Tony Villaraigosa on Fox 11.
Antonio Villaraigosa was asked about the big news last week that Republicans in the Senate voted to take away Gavin Newsom's EV mandate, saying that in 2035, no gas-powered cars can be sold in the state of California. Gavin Newsom, that executive order that he wrote in 2020, needed to have a waiver from the EPA, from the federal government, to go stricter than the standards that are across the entire country. So they revoked it. Gavin says he's going to sue. How does Tony V weigh in on this?
Let's talk about that job right now. The current governor of California, going back and forth with the United States Senate this week, the Senate basically voting down California's rule that in 2035 there would be a ban of the sale of new gas-powered cars. I know you have raised questions about some of what Democrats have done in terms of oil refineries in this state. Do you think that idea that California should ban all gas-powered cars in 2035 is a good idea? Do you support that?
Well, first of all, I don't support what they did.
He sounds older every clip that we play.
He really does. This is bad timing for him, given what just happened to Joe Biden, because maybe in years past, voters would look past it. I know we did with Jerry Brown when we elected a very elderly mayor. But right after Joe Biden, essentially the corpse of Joe Biden, I guess I should say, was sold to us as him being sharp as a tack. And now all the books are saying, of course, that's not true. And it never was true. If you're Antonio Villaraigosa, I don't know how you get around that.
In the Senate.
Okay.
These are people who support a man who says, drill, baby, drill, who doesn't believe in climate change. I mentioned before my record, #1 American city in reducing carbon emissions, #5 in the world.
When was that?
How many years ago, Tony?
The port is the biggest emitter of carcinogens in the region. I made it the greenest port in the world. We used the same, we reduced our water consumption to 1970 levels. I believe in climate action. And what I've said is, why are we closing down refineries If we close 2 more down, we've closed 2. We have the highest gas prices in the country, the cleanest fuel. If we close 2 more refineries, the estimates are our gasoline will go up to $8 a gallon. I don't know about you.
I think Alex is over it.
I think so too.
This is Alex thinking to himself, okay, this question's definitely not making the cut for 10:30. This will be on the extended YouTube show that only I watch.
But here's the thing. He's doing the same thing on virtually every subject. He takes one side and then moves over to the other. And he finishes the answer, and you're not sure exactly where he stands on the subject.
I don't know about you, but me and the people that I grew up with, they care about gasoline because they have cars.
Right.
Now,
You know that car club?
What kind of car do you think Tony V drives?
Well, back in the day, it was a lowrider.
Well, not anymore.
No.
How about a Kia?
now the 2035 mandate. What I've said about it, we built 167,000 charging stations in the first 10 years. We need 2 million more in the next 10 years to get to that 2035 goal. And even if we built those 2 million, we don't have the grid for it. So let's build transmission lines.
Do you know how this state works? We can't build anything quickly.
We passed that water bond how many years ago that was supposed to build reservoirs, and we haven't built a single one? That was like
2014. So that was
almost 10 years ago, 11 years ago.
Let's have a policy of all of the above. I went to...
But does that mean get rid of the mandate then?
No.
You got to be kidding me. You got to be kidding me.
Does that mean get rid of the...
This is one of Alex's best interviews of the year.
Interviewing
Does that
this
mean get
man
rid
is a
of the-
waste of time, though, because he takes both positions in the same answer.
But does that mean get rid of the mandate then?
No. It means start building transmission lines. It means an all of the above strategy that says, yes, we're going to...
But that's not all of the above because the mandate ends the sale of gas-powered cars in 10 years.
What do you think is the problem here? Do you think he doesn't understand it, or do you think he doesn't want to take a strong position because he doesn't want to get the blowback?
That's what it is.
Yes, we're going to focus on renewables, solar and wind, which are peak load powers, not base load power. So the battery power that we need for it, we don't have because today we produce more solar than we need. So we give it away to Arizona in the summer and sell it for 2 cents a kilowatt in the winter. The fact is we need solar, wind, geothermal, big hydrogen, hydro.
Big hydrogen?
What the hell is that?
An H-bomb?
Yeah, I don't know if we need any of that.
Big hydrogen.
This is, by the way, one of those perfect examples of why when you have an interview with a politician, just let the room breathe and let him talk himself into stupidity. If you interrupt him, you stop this nonsensical stream of consciousness.
People frequently ask me whenever I interview a guest, I don't interrupt people. I don't yell over them unless they're really egregious and they're really filibustering. Generally speaking, I ask a question and then I let them talk. Because if you let them talk, they'll tell you everything you need to know. You will realize if they're fluent in the subject matter. You will realize if they're directly answering my question or avoiding it. You don't need me to tell you. You can figure it out on your own. And boy, are we learning a lot about Tony V right now.
Big hydrogen, hydro, little hydro. We need gasoline and
Nuclear?
Small nuclear and gas. One last thing about that. Norway, one of the greenest countries, believes in climate change. They have a leadership that's very aggressive on it. They're able to pay for their greening of Norway by producing gas and oil.
So are you against the mandate or not?
Who knows? Who the hell knows?
We
Alex is so done.
I am so much more confused after hearing him take a lot of time to answer that question.
That's why I love long form interviews.
we can't just close down refineries and say it's okay to have $8 a gallon gas, put it on the backs of working people. That's who the Democratic Party used to be, a party of who stood up for working people and the middle class. We're not that party anymore. So I don't agree.
So you want to call somebody out for it?
No, we can't do that.
So I don't agree with what they did and how they did it because these are climate deniers. They believe in drill, baby, drill.
Drill baby Bill.
That's a new one.
They believe in drill, baby, drill. I believe in a sound, all of the above approach to taking on climate change. And that means don't let the perfect get in the way of the good. Let's do it with alacrity and dispatch. Let's build again. You mentioned the governor. I was his infrastructure advisor. And I said, if we don't build faster, streamline CEQA and permitting, Texas and Florida are going to draw down more infrastructure money than we do, and they are.
So he didn't listen to you.
Well, I'll just say they are.
Okay.
Why won't he take a shot at Newsom?
I don't know. He's willing to be passive aggressive with all of them, but he's not willing to be outright aggressive. I don't get it. It's not like saying something nasty and then holding your punch is going to make them like you. If you're taking a shot at them, they're going to be irritated. So if you're going to irritate them, go for it. Take a bite at that apple.
But look at this. This was a 4-minute answer to a simple question, and I have no idea what his actual position is. How can anyone listen to this interview and understand what exactly Tony Villaraigosa stands for outside of I want to be governor?
Yeah. I don't see how this guy gets out of the primary. I just don't. I don't see a path for him. If he was more aggressive running as the outsider, then maybe there would be one. But this, I'm not going to take a position on anything, and I'm going to sound 900 years old while I do it. That's not going to win any votes. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number. 1-800-222-5222. Let's go to Jaden in Oakland. Jaden, hello.
I know what I was thinking, but what was I feeling? What's up, boys? It's Jaden in Oakland. I want to talk about your subject. Gavin Newsom correlates to what I'm thinking. Thanks for getting me on the air. Shout out to Tom Likas, too, by the way. And I was thinking Gavin Newsom has homeless people everywhere. Every area is teeming with these homeless people. They in tents. You could park a Hummer inside these tents. I seen in Vallejo off Highway 37 near Costco, there's a vacant lot. There was about 80 homeless people, and one of their girlfriends had Louis Vuitton. And I think that the Fish and Game, and I'm not being facetious, Fish and Game should pass an ordinance where they could get all these rattlesnakes off hiking trails and put them in the homeless encampments on the vacant lot, and put like Tom Likas said, put a pile of fentanyl out there and say, have at it, boys. Let the government put piles of fentanyl out there that could feed on like hummingbirds. And then Tom Likas also said the homeless bums have great hair. You never see a bald homeless guy. Tom Likas said this years ago. I'll paraphrase. He said it better than me. But you guys need to have Tom on your show as a guest. I love you guys. I never heard you guys until now, but I'm hearing you in the Bay Area, so you can consider me your boy, too. This is Jaden, Oakland, and I want to tell the apartment manager, my mama ain't no pack rat. She uses the apartment balcony for storage for Christmas goods. So the apartment manager's listening right now. His name is Derek. Derek, I ain't going to cuss on the radio, but I want to.
All right. Thank you for the call, Jaden. We appreciate it.
That was special.
Tom's a good friend. He's a fun guy to bet on hockey with. And let me tell you, if you eat dinner over at his house, you're going to eat well and you're going to drink well, too. We love Tom. All right. I know it's not a holiday, Randy, but today feels like a holiday to me. Does it feel like a holiday to you?
The whole week feels like a holiday. Well, it especially feels like that for me because I'm not in Los Angeles this week. I'm in beautiful Santa Fe, New Mexico. So instead of having to deal with a hellish commute on the 405 listening to that interview with Viragosa, I listened to it while hiking up Cross of the Martyrs.
Having a 4-day week is like coming back from a trip from the East Coast or a foreign country where your whole internal clock is all screwed up because of the time change and it takes you a long time to recalibrate. I don't know. Just kind of feels like a lost week.
That's fine. We're all checked out.
And, of course, today we learned the breaking news that Todd and Julie Chrisley, the reality show stars from the USA Network, were given a full pardon by President Trump, so they will be released from prison as early as today or possibly tomorrow. That story, of course, broken by TMZ. We brought that to you earlier in the day. All right, that's going to do it for us today, but we'll be back tomorrow, hopefully in both markets. We were working on our computer system in the Bay Area, but hopefully we'll be on live in both markets between noon and 3